офицера и джентльмена. Вот бодхисаттву и джентльмена, как совмещать, я лично в своей жизни слышу впервые. И продолжение нашего разговора. Я думаю, мы сейчас посмотрим на наши проблемы с даосистской практикой, поэтому я приглашаю на сцену с докладом о протонауках сознания человека, которого я должен представить как Алан Франсис, потому что это связано с его работой в Париже, или Алан Франсис, если связано с работой в Орегоне, в Соединенных Штатах. Итак, Алан Франсис, преподаватель-исследователь даосизма и учения Георгия Гурджиева. Четвертый путь внутренний, да, кто знаком, четвертый путь познания. Прошу.
I want to thank Timur and Dimitri for creating this forum. The lights are turned out. There was a PowerPoint presentation, but it's not here. The lights are turned out because I wanted everyone to have a feeling, an impression of something that existed before the formal mental processes. Something that exists now, even here. And perhaps you can set aside your ordinary thought processes for a moment. I know you've heard a lot of ideas, a lot of words. But if we want to come to something called wisdom, these ideas and these words must be connected with actual experience. And this experience occurs within this body, initially, and within this human body that we all share. So, I'm going to just sit down. Please excuse my informality. You can turn out the lights a little bit if you can, perhaps not all the way if it's possible. The traditions that I'm speaking about, Mr. Gurdjieff's tradition of the Fourth Way, was preceded by many thousands of years by the Taoist tradition, which from my studies also is connected with this Fourth Way. And the Taoist tradition, which was actually the beginning of the explanation by the Lama, because the Taoist tradition doesn't believe in what would be complete emptiness, but rather they begin not with complete emptiness, but with a void that is not empty. That is, it's full of potential. And this is like zero. You can represent it by a zero, and you can represent the beginning of the unified force of consciousness as one. When you reflect upon this unified force, this initial force, like we are now reflecting on it, then one duplicates itself. So it's 0, 1, 1. And these add together to form 2, which is represented by the symbol of yin and yang. And this symbol is really the first paradigm. And by paradigm, I do not mean a simple answer to some situation. A paradigm is holding 2 or more different, fundamentally different views at the same time. Not in saying, yes, this is right, no, this is wrong, this is good, this is evil, but rather including both the idea of materialization and spiritualization at the same time. That these two do not have to be separated. You can turn up the lights. Свет.
Можно
Пожалуйста.
включить свет.
Да. Пожалуйста. So that the proto-science of the Taoist begins with this idea of 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, which you many recognize as the beginning of the Fibonacci series, the life spiral. At the point of 2, though, there's a division. 2 is just like 0, 1 in the computer, and in fact, when you square this binomial A plus B or yin and yang, you create a square, and from a square you take it to a cube, and from a cube you begin to move it into space and time. And so the beginning of the Taoist concept is that the binomial yin and yang, A plus B, to the 6 powers becomes what is called the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, which shows all the basic permutations that can occur from the addition of these two different concepts, yin and yang. At the same time that we have these very symmetrical, very linear sort of view, which I think was very well represented here in this conference, there's also another viewpoint, which is that as you move through the development of the world, you move into a triad, and which is represented in the yin-yang symbol by the interface, the S, and also the fact of it's encompassing both factors, male, female, dark and light, and so on. From here it goes to 5, because 3 plus 2 is 5, it's simply additive, and you have the 5 elements which you also find in other systems. 5 elements is the beginning of what you call function and what you call form. So all these things that we were talking about in dealing with function and form, even with the human brain, which is a form, is far down the scale. And if we begin to work, to meditate, to observe ourselves, we want to move back up the scale towards the one, towards the evolving back into the one, unity, and back into the non-emptiness, the void that is not empty, where all the potential exists. So from the point of view of the Taoists, you have these 5 elements, and you have, from there you have all the organs of the body, you have all the colors, you have all the smells, you have all the senses. And from here you move from the creation of a form to the potential perfection of the form, which again is bringing in new ideas. It brings in the idea of air, of breathing. Now, some people have spoken about energy and spoken about how you eat food and you gain energy. Of course, this is quite true. You also gain energy from air. And if you take in air consciously, you begin to gain more energy. And that's part of the main function, the main purpose of human beings, to receive, to accumulate not only just energy of the physical level of the food, but energy of higher levels, which include the air we breathe and also the impressions we take in, the light we take in through our eyes, the sound we take in through our ears. This is also a food. This is also an energy that our body can incorporate. The main difference between, I think, the viewpoints that are often represented here and the viewpoints of proto-science is that we are not, we did not come from a lower place. On one hand, yes, we did. We can see it in our bodies. We have iron in our blood, for example. We have minerals. But at the same time, we came from a much higher place, a much deeper place. And when we forget that, when we turn only towards the lower, only towards the manifestations of form and function, then we lose something which is inherently human, inherently important for us. So right now what I would like to do is speak a little bit about something which is common both to Taoism and to the GF work, which is this idea of self-observation. Because it's fundamental, the witness to this conscious force. How can I be a witness to my own life, to my own body sitting here? Am I aware that I'm sitting here? This self-awareness is the beginning of real evolution. So if you're sitting there and you have no relationship to your body, no relationship to your posture, to your form, then you lose something very vital in this equation. Can you be aware of yourself? Is it possible? If you can be, then it's possible to create a practice in which day by day you increasingly become more aware of yourself and you are able to see yourself. As Socrates says, to know yourself. How can you know yourself if you don't pay attention to yourself? If you don't look and see what happens in yourself? The second thing that the GF work speaks about, which I think is very interesting, is that we need to remember ourselves. We need to feel who we are. We need to be present in our feelings as well as in our mind. Our mind is not enough. And here we perhaps differ with the Buddhist teachings because the emotions are not the enemy, just as the body is not the enemy. The emotions are part of the human experience. I think as the Archbishop was saying before, this is part of life, part of our gift for being here. But emotions are overrated because they're mostly reactions. So what we want to come to, if it's possible, is to feeling, is a kind of awareness, a feeling of myself now, that I'm here, that I actually exist. I'm not just a virtual reality. I'm actually a person in this body. So if you're not aware that you're in this body now, you might try it just as an experiment. Many scientists here try it as an experiment. How could I be aware of myself in this body? Even just my sensations, my feet on the ground, my butt on the chair, looking out at you. So real observation begins with looking inside at the same moment that I'm also looking out. These two must occur together. And then I see that I have an inner world and an outer world. And I begin to feel myself, I begin to awaken to myself. And all the powers that exist within the human being, which are trying to be replicated by machines, we have not explored at all. These powers that exist within us, which includes potentially telepathic powers and many others, exist already inside of us. So I would like to express this possibility to you, that you also can gain more powers and become more human than you are now. And if there's any interest, I thought instead of my talking, because you've heard so much talking, maybe somebody would like to ask a question and we could actually have dialogue instead of one-way talking. So if anybody was interested, otherwise I can continue. Perhaps there's somebody interested in this idea of self-consciousness, not just external consciousness. Yes?
Сейчас, одну секунду.
Вы рассказали о четвертом пути, несколько слов. Как вы в своей повседневной жизни увязываете вот это самонаблюдение, самопознание с постоянным ускоряющимся объективным технологическим ростом техники, который мы наблюдаем? Спасибо.
Спасибо. terribly, totally forgot about it. So how can you combine the objective process of speeding up of the technical progress with this fourth way inside you?
It's a very, very good question. Gurdjieff was very interested in technology. He even thought of becoming some kind of technologist. He worked with transformers, which were being developed by Nikola Tesla, of course, at the time. And so technology was something that he wanted to include within the process. But how to include it if you don't have a really good idea of why you're here? How can you speak about where technology should go if you don't know where you're going, why you're here, what your purpose on Earth is, what human purpose is on Earth? If we begin to see why we're here, we can guide technology. But until we see that, how can we guide it? I can't really see out that way, so...
Пожалуйста.
Ну, когда мы говорим о большей осознанности, то хотелось бы знать, какие гурджиевские техники вы бы предлагали для нашей повседневной практики. Я скажу это по-английски. Would you mind suggest any Gurdjieff practices for us which we can use in our daily observation of ourselves? Thank you.
One of the fundamentals both of Gurdjieff work and Taoist work is to become in contact with your sensation. The idea being that sensation, all the different sensations we have and all the different ways in which we get input into our system are part of this conscious force, certainly at a very low level, but part of this conscious force that we can become connected with. So by bringing our attention to our bodies, we can begin to increase the conscious force within our bodies. We can support the relationship between this force and ourselves. So, for example, you can take the exercise of being aware of your hands, yes, during the day. Becoming aware of your hands, becoming aware that you have hands. They are your hands. How often do you feel that? How often do you really know that? No, they're just external sort of things. You know, they're sort of like robotic, right? We have to stop being robots ourselves. We have to start being human, which means we have to become aware. So you can be aware of your hands as the beginning, for example, or aware of the tensions in your face, which can also be very useful because it shows you something of the mask you're wearing. Each person here is wearing masks. If we want to see reality, we have to drop these masks. We can't go on looking out or looking in from the point of view of these masks, these ego projections. So it takes some certain courage to drop them, to let them go. But it's possible. So if you want to relax your face, that's a good starting point.
Давайте так, это еще один вопрос, и на этом все. Потому что я не готов поверить в бесконечную вселенную в пределах нашего зала.
Здравствуйте, скажите, пожалуйста, вы вот как человек, изучающий Гурджиева, знающий его практики, можете развеять, может быть, легенду, а может быть, историю о том, что он был связан там и со Сталиным, и с Гитлером, и как вы видите практики Гурджиева в проекте «Аватар»? Спасибо.
So two parts of the question. The first, can we comment, allegedly, relations between Gurdjieff and Hitler and Stalin? And the second, how, еще раз будьте добры, напомните с проектом «Аватар». Yeah, and what are the relationship between Gurdjieff practices and Avatar project?
Well, the first question, I don't think anybody knows too much about it. Certainly, there is evidence that Stalin lived in the village that Gurdjieff lived at one time, and perhaps even was with his family for a time. As far as Hitler, I have absolutely seen no evidence to support any direct connection with Hitler's, and certainly he was working against everything Hitler stood for. Gurdjieff had, for example, in occupied France, he was helping Jews to survive the Hitler purges. He had no relation at all to anything like that, as far as I know. As far as the relation to the Avatar project, I think it's a question. I think it's a real big question as to the relation to real human evolution, which to me, I've spoken about is to be incorporating this conscious force more and more in myself, and to raise my level of consciousness. I'm not talking about social consciousness. I'm talking about psychological consciousness, of actually going up the scale of consciousness, being more awake, not just aware of my body, my presence, but the people around me, nature, being connected with nature, all these kinds of things, greater and greater, to the point of what was called cosmic consciousness. This is my main interest. As far as the technology of the Avatar project, some of these things are going to happen whether we like it or not. It's just a fact. Some of these things are going to occur, as the Archbishop said, if we survive. And I think we need to be in contact with that so that there can be some kind of guidance, some kind of wisdom guidance to these technical processes. Otherwise, it's just going to create monsters as far as I can see. So who, as was asked, who is going to guide this process? Where are the wise people in the world? I think we have to find them, and they perhaps can help guide the technology.
Terribly sorry that I remind you about my mission, about my duty here, both mission and duty, to remind you about time.
How much time?
Yeah, well, we're over time, enormously.
We are over time.
Yeah.
Please. Thank you very much. Apologize for taking too much time.